Okay, it's running.
Okay. Thank you. And Congresswoman, I'll give you the go-ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck.
I'm going to snap as many pictures now. That way I don't have to bother you guys when you're talking.
We probably should move these.
I'm shooting above, so I didn't
okay.
but thank you.
Okay, Congresswoman, you can begin.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kirsten Sinema, and I'm honored to serve as your representative in Congress. Right now, you're listening to a live telephone town hall. This is an exciting and convenient way for us to keep in touch. During tonight's telephone town hall, you can ask us your questions, so I hope you'll stay on and participate in our event this evening. If you'd like to ask a question, just press 0 at any time tonight to get into the queue. As a school social worker for 10 years, I learned to put the families I served first. Now, as your representative in Congress, we're working to put the people of Congressional District 9 first. One of the ways I'm doing that is by working to help women and their families get ahead. Tonight, I want to have a conversation about the issues of concern to you and what I'm doing to ensure that women and families succeed. I stood up when Congress tried to allow employers to deny coverage for basic women's health care, like birth control. I opposed that law, and I believe that only a woman, her family, and her doctor should decide what's best for her health. I also took the lead to pass the Violence Against Women Act, which protects women from abuse and provides tools for law enforcement to crack down on abusers. I'm also a co-sponsor of the Paycheck Fairness Act. Many of you probably know firsthand that women in Arizona are still paid less on average than men, even if they have the exact same job. That's just not fair, and I believe Congress needs to act to address this problem that hurts women and their families. To explore these issues and dive into them more deeply, I'm joined tonight by a very special guest, Kelly Dupes. Kelly is a Colorado native who came to Arizona 5 years ago from Washington, D.C. Kelly's career spans over 18 years, serving as a political organizer and community educator in various parts of the country. Currently, she serves as the political engagement coordinator at Planned Parenthood Arizona. She works to ensure women across Arizona know where candidates for elected office stand on issues important to women and their families. But before we hear from Kelly, I want to let all of you know that we'll take your questions, your comments, and your thoughts throughout the call this evening. So if you want to ask a question or share your opinion, just press 0 at any time. And now, we're going to ask Kelly to give us an update on the issues facing women and families right now in Arizona.
Thank you, Kirsten, and good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to be with you tonight, and I look forward to answering your questions and hearing your thoughts. But first, I have to say that we here in Arizona really miss Kirsten at the State House. After the Hobby Lobby instance, we are really looking for more champions in Phoenix to stand up for women and their families, because we know that when women succeed, Arizona succeeds. We also know that contraception and birth control here in Arizona are becoming more limited for families and becoming more of an expense, since employers are able to say that they don't have to pay for that anymore. We also have a state that is really binding down on what can happen. Warrantless searches are happening at health clinics across the state, and they don't have regulations for plastic surgery clinics the same way. So that is just not fair. But we're also looking the way that women can go forward here in Arizona. We know that equal work for equal pay is an Arizonan value. We also know that the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act is really helpful to women here in Arizona. It protects women, it provides crucial funding, and it gives law enforcement the tools to really crack down and be problem solvers in situations of domestic violence.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for that. I really appreciate that update. As we can see, there's a lot of work to be done here in Arizona and across the country. So thanks, everyone, so much. You know, listening to you is my most important responsibility. So now I want to hear from all of you. So, again, if you have a question and you're on the line, just press 0 at any time, and you'll get right into the queue. If you have a comment or would like to share your opinion with me, just press 0 at any time. I also want to ask you all a few questions because knowing what you believe helps me make decisions in Congress that reflect the values of my constituents. So throughout this evening, I'm going to ask you a few questions. The first question, I want to know how you feel about the Supreme Court decision. So I'd like you to press 1 if you oppose the recent Supreme Court decision in the Hobby Lobby case, which said employers could decide whether or not to limit access to birth control of their employees. Press no if you support the decision. So press 1 if you oppose the decision, press 2 if you oppose the decision, and press 3 if you're not sure or don't know about this recent decision. Again, press 1 if you oppose the Supreme Court decision restricting the ability for employees to get access to birth control if their employers don't want them to have it. Press 2 if you support that decision, and press 3 if you're not sure. While you're answering that question, I'll share with you why I have recently opposed that decision. I'm working in Congress to reverse it. I believe that women should have access to reproductive health care no matter where they work or who they work for. If they have a health care insurance plan through their employer, they should all be treated equally, men and women alike. And that's why I co-sponsored House Bill 5051, which would reverse the Hobby Lobby decision so that working women in Arizona and across the country can all have fair and equal access to the health care they need, regardless of whom they work for. Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about what the Hobby Lobby decision has meant for women here in Arizona and their families?
Sure, Kirsten. The Hobby Lobby decision really opens the door for more limits put on women and their ability to make their own health care decisions. It allows more intrusion, not less, into a woman's health care decisions. And Planned Parenthood believes that politicians don't need to be in our personal health care decisions. We believe in trusting women and trusting them to be able to plan for their families and when they have families. And the Hobby Lobby decision really, puts another nose into that decision, this time your employer. First it was your congressperson or your senator, and now it's your boss. And these are, personal decisions that, don't need intrusion from any folks, especially your boss. Can you imagine your supervisor being in the exam room with you, helping you make those decisions? I don't think so. And so that's really kind of what it comes down to, especially in states like Arizona that at the state level are really attacking women's health, and really the ability for folks to do with their bodies what they wish.
Well, thanks so much, Kelly. We do have a couple calls on the line, so if you would like to speak, remember just press 0 at any time to ask a question or share your opinion. Erin from Phoenix is on the line. Erin, you're live.
Hi, yes, thanks for taking my question. I appreciate it. I heard some legislation about the Hobby Lobby decision being overturned. Can you discuss a little bit more about that?
Sure.
When is it going to happen?
So when the Supreme Court... Sure. Well, when the Supreme Court made its decision in Hobby Lobby, the Supreme Court said that if a corporation is a closely held corporation, which means a small number of people own and run the company, like a family, that they can make a decision as if it weren't a corporation, but as if they were individual people. Now, that seems kind of weird to me, but that's what the Supreme Court said. And therefore, the Supreme Court said that because these closely held corporations that are owned by just a handful of people, that they can make decisions as if they were individuals, what that has allowed them to do is to say that they don't want their employees to get access to birth control, even though they're providing them health care insurance plans that cover everything else in the normal health care world. So it specifically says you can have health care for everything except for birth control. Now, we introduced a piece of legislation in Congress H.R. 5051 that simply says that women, heck, and men should get access to birth control in their health care plan just like they get access to all of the other medications they need for their families, for their future, and for their bodies. So H.R. 5051 simply says that birth control will continue to be part of a health care plan for those employees who want to have that in their health care plan. I hope that answered your question, Erin. And thank you so much. I know we have more folks calling in. I want to remind you just to press 0 if you want to ask a question or share your comments or concerns with me. I also want to share with you the results of the poll that we just took. I asked how many of you supported the Hobby Lobby decision. 27% of you say you support the Hobby Lobby decision that says that employers can choose not to cover birth control if they don't want their employees to have access to it. 55% of you said that you oppose the Hobby Lobby decision, and 18% of you are unsure. Thank you so much for that feedback. That helps guide the decisions I make when I go back to Washington to fight for you. We have another call. Benita in Tempe, you're on the line.
Am I on the line?
You are, Benita. We can hear you.
Okay, my thing is, since no one can force a woman to use birth control if she doesn't want to, what was the reasoning that said that someone who wasn't them could say that they couldn't have it if they wanted it?
You're right. There is no one in this country who can force someone else to take birth control or use birth control if they don't want to. I mean, we have great freedoms in this country. What the Hobby Lobby decision said was that your boss could decide not to cover the cost of your birth control, even though current federal law says that birth control has to be free under your health insurance throughout the country. Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about the changes in healthcare law that said that birth control would be free and why some women now can't get access to it because of the Hobby Lobby decision?
Sure. Under the ACA, all birth control was considered, before that, a pre-existing condition and was not covered, essentially. With the passage of the Affordable Care Act, essentially all birth control, the pill, intrauterine devices, things like that would be free or covered under the insurance plan. Well, with the Hobby Lobby decision, basically the Supreme Court said your boss can decide that they would not like to cover your birth control. They'll cover your antibiotics, they will cover Viagra, they'll cover all other medicines, but the pill and other forms of birth control, they would not cover. And so that kind of leaves many women out, having to cover their own birth control now, which really impacts families being able to, put food on the table, get kids to school, things like that. So it really does impact families across Arizona.
Kelly, I'm glad that you talked about this and explained a little bit. There are a lot of women in Arizona who utilize birth control not just to make decisions about when or if to have children, but also for medical reasons. There are many women who need birth control to help with part of their medical concerns, whether they have ovarian cysts or have had other issues in terms of bleeding in the past, that birth control is often prescribed by doctors for women for medical reasons that are separate and apart from deciding when to have a baby. And these women who need birth control for medical reasons would also have the birth control taken away from them if their employer has decided that he or she doesn't want to pay for the cost of the insurance. So for some of these women, buying this birth control for medical reasons out of pocket would be very, very expensive. We're talking lots and lots of dollars every month. Kelly, what are some of the costs like for folks who need birth control if they don't have insurance to cover it?
Well, it's just going to you have to pay for it just out of pocket like you would anything else. And we're talking any range from $30 to $50 a month for a general, 30-day supply of the pill. And, just because it is used for birth control, it's a hormone replacement therapy that happens. We refer to it because its common use is for birth control, but it really is to regulate hormones in women. And so there are many women at any stage of life that may need to have those hormones regulated to make sure that they, are healthy and that they're able to provide for the folks in their lives.
So the impact of the Hobby Lobby decision is far-reaching and impedes women's ability to make decisions about when or if to start a family, and also, for many women, can impact them financially for medical reasons separate and apart from family rearing, which is one of the reasons I oppose it. Benita, thank you so much for your question. I hope we answered it. Remember, if you'd like to ask a question, just press 0 at any time. We'll add you to the queue. I want to ask a second question of all of you. One of the issues that we hear from working women in particular is the fact that folks aren't making enough to take care of their families. So I want to ask you about the minimum wage. Right now, there's a proposal in Congress to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. Right now in Arizona, the minimum wage is just over $7 an hour. So I'd like to ask you to press number 1 on your phone if you support raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. Press 2 on your phone if you do not support raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. And press 3 if you're not sure or don't know. While you're answering that poll question, I'll tell you why I supported a bill, H.R. 1010, to increase the minimum wage. I believe that nobody who works full-time should have to live in poverty. But unfortunately, in today's Arizona, a worker who works full-time at minimum wage can't earn enough to pay rent, pay a car payment, and feed their family. It just isn't enough money to get you out of poverty. And studies have shown that women make up a very large percentage of minimum wage workers. So women are more likely to work full-time and live in poverty than men. We believe that increasing their wages will help expand economic opportunity for everyone. So please, again, answer the question and tell me what you think. If you support raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, press 1 for yes. If you oppose it, press 2 for no. And if you're not sure, press 3. Our next caller on the line is Katie from Tempe. Katie, you're live.
Hi, Kirsten. Thank you so much for taking my question. I'm a college student here, and I was wondering what you're working on to keep college affordable, especially for folks here in Arizona.
Well, you have asked a great question, Katie. This is something I'm really passionate about. I also teach at Arizona State University, and so I work with college kids almost every weekend. In fact, I'm teaching again this Saturday. I've been teaching at ASU for 12 years. I also went to ASU and earned my degrees there. And so I personally know how difficult it is to try and make it when you have crippling student loans. I've still got quite a lot of student loans myself that I'm paying off. And I hear from my students how over the last 12 years it has gotten more severe and more expensive for students to get access to a college education. Part of my concern, Katie, is that right now college is pretty expensive. The average ASU student graduates with a bachelor's degree and about $18,000 to $25,000 in debt. With that kind of debt, you're going to delay buying your first house, buying a car, getting married, having kids. So people are delaying important life decisions because of their uncertainty about their financial circumstances. I think there are 2 major things we can do, Katie. Number 1, keep the student loan interest rates low. I sponsored a bill called STEADY. The STEADY Act is a bill that would keep interest rates low for 4 years so that when a student enters college as a freshman, he or she knows that they'll have the same student loan rate for the entire 4 years of their undergraduate degree. That way they can predict what their loan will look like when they get out of school. That can help them make a decision about what kind of job to get and whether or not they can afford to buy a car and a house. But just keeping student loan interest rates isn't enough because the cost of tuition has increased rapidly over the last decade. So we have to do more to keep the tuition rates under control. And there are proposals where the federal government can use federal funding to leverage power with the states. Unfortunately, Katie, here in Arizona, we've seen the state legislature increase tuition rates by almost double. And the reason those tuition rates have increased so much is because the state legislature voted to cut its contribution to state schools at the college and university level by over 50%. So, of course, when you're losing your funding from the state government, colleges are making it up by tuition increases. One way to stop tuition from increasing is for the state legislature to appropriately fund college education as required by the Arizona Constitution. Since this legislature doesn't show much of an interest in doing that, it might be possible for the federal government to provide incentives or to use carrot and stick approach together to get state universities and state legislatures to do a better job of keeping these costs low. So I hope we answered your question, Katie. If you'd like more information, though, just visit our website at KirstenCinema.com, and you can learn more information about the work we're doing to help students. It's a big priority of mine, and I know I still worry about my student loans, and I'm sure you are too. Before we go to our next question, I do want to share the results of our last poll. I asked if you supported raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. 69% of you said yes, and 31% of you said no. And nobody was undecided. So that's a great answer, and I really appreciate your input. That helps me know that when I go back to Congress, I'll keep fighting again to increase that minimum wage. Next on the line, we have Jessica from Mesa.
Hi, Kirsten. I was just wondering, now since we're talking about minimum wage, how would raising the minimum wage impact my small business that I own in Mesa?
Well, that's a good question, Jessica. One of the concerns about raising the minimum wage is to make sure that it doesn't negatively impact small businesses. The good news is that studies have consistently shown throughout America's history that raising the minimum wage does not have a negative impact on businesses either large or small. In fact, raising the minimum wage has a positive impact because those wage earners then take that money they're earning and turn right around and spend it in the marketplace. So while as a small business owner, you may see paying higher wages in the short term is something tough to do for your employees, but the good news is other employees throughout the state will use those dollars to spend at your business, which will increase the amount of revenue coming into your business. So again, if you'd like more information about that, Jessica, we're happy to share with you some of these studies that show increasing the minimum wage helps businesses both small and large alike. Thanks so much for your question. Remember, if you'd like to ask a question this evening or you want to share your opinion, just press 0 at any time to ask a question or share your opinion. And I have one more question for all of you. This will be my last question for you this evening. We have a bill in Congress called the Paycheck Fairness Act. The Paycheck Fairness Act is legislation that would ensure that women who do the same job as men get paid the same salary as those men. So assuming that two individuals are doing the same job, have the same education and experience, they would get paid equally. Because right now, there's no requirement that men and women get paid the same for doing the exact same job. So if you support the Paycheck Fairness Act, please press 1. Again, this bill would ensure that women are paid the same as men if they do the same job as a man. If you do not support the Paycheck Fairness Act, just press 2 now. And if you're unsure or don't know, press 3. And while you're answering that, I want to just remind you that there's a very important election coming up. Our general election is less than 3 weeks away. It's on Tuesday, November the 4th. If you've requested an early ballot already, it should have arrived in your mailbox by now. Mine did. Mine arrived on Saturday. So if you get your early ballot, please make sure and vote and mail it back before October 30th. After October 30th, it's too late to mail in, and you have to walk it into a polling place, any polling place in the state. I already voted. I voted on Monday morning. So if you want to request an early ballot, you still have time to ask for an early ballot to be mailed to your home. You can press 0 at any time to speak to someone who will help you request an early ballot. You can ask for an early ballot all the way up until October the 24th. So you still have 9 more days to request your ballot. While we're tallying the results of our last poll question, it looks like we have another caller on the line. Christine from Phoenix, you're live.
Hi, Congresswoman. Thanks so much for taking my question. I was just wondering, what is the current pay gap between men and women, and how likely is it that the legislation you were mentioning is going to get passed?
Well, the difference between pay for men and women varies throughout the country. Nationally, women earn about 77 cents for every dollar that a man earns. But in Arizona, women earn 84 cents for every dollar that a man earns. Pretty impressive, right? Arizona is not often seen as being one of the states that's way ahead of the curve, but we are. So in Arizona, women earn 84 cents for every dollar that a man makes. That's still not equal. There's still a 16-cent differential for every single dollar, and that's why we support the Paycheck Fairness Act. You know, the Paycheck Fairness Act, in my opinion, is common sense legislation that simply says that we should treat people equally, no matter whether they're men or women. But passing this bill in Congress is going to be a tough issue because there are many people in Congress who don't support legislation that requires men and women to be paid equally. Kelly, is this something that you all experience in the work that you do with women here in Arizona?
Definitely. We see a lot of women in Arizona from every economic class, but definitely, excuse me, but definitely, you know, it impacts families across the state when, you know, mothers and aunts and sisters are only making 84 cents to the dollar that their brothers and fathers are making. You know, it just perpetuates the inequity across the lines. And so, you know, we see it in our patients, we see it in our staff, and it's something that, you know, Planned Parenthood strives to make an issue, is making sure that folks are treated equally, regardless of their gender.
Well, I think that's an important point, Kelly. And you know what's so surprising is a lot of people don't actually know about this pay differential. But when they learn about it, women and the men that many women live with and love, brothers, sisters, husbands, partners, dads, and uncles, are also upset because they know that the women in their lives work hard and deserve to be paid equally too. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for your questions. We've got another caller on the line. Ron from Chandler, you're live.
Yes, my question relates back to the first issue that we talked about with women's health issues. I don't feel that the Hobby Lobby decision was good because it gives Hobby Lobby the right to enforce their religious beliefs on somebody else. And the second part is I don't believe that a corporation is a person under any circumstances, and I would like to see you introduce legislation to address that situation as that's affected both this decision and the campaign finance reform that the Supreme Court issued a ruling on.
Well, Ron, I agree with you 100%. Corporations are not people. They're businesses. And I do think that's a weird decision from the Supreme Court to say that a corporation can have a religious belief. That just doesn't make much sense. People have religious beliefs, and I want to be clear, I think it's very important in our country that we continue to uphold part of what makes our country so unique, which is respecting individuals' freedom of religion so that individuals can practice whatever religious belief matters most to them, and they can do so free from interference from the government. But I do think it's wrong to impose your religious beliefs on another person or group of people, and that's why I oppose Hobby Lobby. It's not okay for your boss to tell you whether or not you can have access to a certain medication because their religious belief may or may not agree with it. That just doesn't make sense to me. And I certainly echo your concerns about the campaign finance issue. Unfortunately, we've seen the influx of dark money in American politics, and we've seen it come with nastier and uglier television commercials that are often not true and not accurate. But because they're funded by corporations in the shadows, there's no one to hold accountable or responsible for behaving inappropriately. One of the things that we've always valued in America's politics is transparency and accountability. So you can say whatever you think, but you have to be accountable for it. You have to say it with your name and your face attached to it. And it's unfortunate that now, thanks to Citizens United, there are corporations and the folks who own them who can have political speech without being honest about who they are. So we've got to change that, and I support legislation to change that as well. So thanks again so much, Ron. I want to share the results of our third poll question. I asked if you supported the Paycheck Fairness Act that would ensure that women are paid the same as men for doing the same job. 69% of you said yes. 23% of you do not support the Paycheck Fairness Act, and 8% of you are unsure and don't know. If you'd like to learn more about the Paycheck Fairness Act, just press 0 and we'll connect you with our team to give you information about the bill. And thank you again so much for sharing your feedback with us. Again, that helps me make decisions about how I'll behave when I get back to Congress and the work I'll do on your behalf. I think we've got time for some more questions. Brian from Phoenix, you're on the line, and welcome.
Good evening, Congresswoman, and thank you for your work. My question is there any legislation that could help me and my wife with child care expenses?
You know, that's an important question, Brian. I'm glad you asked it. You know, years ago here in Arizona, in 2009, the state legislature cut funding for the child care tax credit, which was legislation that existed in Arizona law for quite some time to help subsidize the cost of child care for working families, particularly lower income working families. Now, this is a big deal because, as you probably know, Brian, child care in Arizona can cost as much as college can cost. And so if you're a working family, it can be almost impossible to meet those costs. Unfortunately, in 2009, the state legislature cut funding for the child care tax credit, and so they lost a lot of the federal matching funds that were coming from Congress. The good news is that some of that funding has been restored by partnerships like First Things First and other groups that stood up to pay the matching funds to restore those funds. But as you probably know, Brian, that child care tax credit is not enough for many working families. And that's why I support legislation in Congress that would expand the child care tax credit so that more working moms and dads can get access to appropriate, certified child care that is safe for their kids while they're working hard to make a living. Kelly, I know over at Planned Parenthood you all deal with lots of working moms. What kind of impact does child care have on these working moms' ability to get the kind of care they need and take care of their families?
It can be a challenge for working moms and dads to really get the health care that they need. Many of our Planned Parenthood clinics provide primary care, and not only just for moms, but for dads and kids as well. But we know that it's a challenge to juggle a job, kids, and their lives as well. And so it's really a challenge being able to find that quality child care. And we have been partnering with many child care associations throughout the state to make sure that we're able to provide at least referrals and resources for parents, for working families, to make sure that they have access to child care. But it is, at the state level, the defunding of so many things from education to child care. It's important that we elect state leaders that also have Arizona families in mind. So you can go to our website at advocatesaz.org to check out state leaders who are also on the ballot.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Kelly. We have time for a couple more questions. Olivia from Mesa is on the line. Remember, if you'd like to speak, just press 0 at any time to ask a question or share your comments with me. Olivia, you're live.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. You mentioned that you passed the Violence Against Women Act. What does it provide, and how does it help families?
Oh, that's a great question, Olivia. The Violence Against Women Act is a very, very large and comprehensive bill. It's been in existence in our country for over 20 years now, and in January of 2013, I was proud to join with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, both Republicans and Democrats, to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act. Here in Arizona, the Violence Against Women Act provides critical funding for domestic violence shelters to help women, children, and those who have been abused seek safe shelter. The bill also provides funding to help individuals who are survivors of abuse get job training and relocate to safe communities. The legislation also provides critical services. For instance, if someone has been abused and has to flee their abuser, it can be very scary to set up a new address. And if that's publicly available, maybe the person who hurt them will stalk them and hurt them and their family again. So the Violence Against Women Act actually creates an opportunity for women and kids who are in grave danger from their abusers to remain confidential and get help from the state to have a mailing address that is not their home address, so their stalker can't find them and hurt them any longer. The Violence Against Women Act, when reauthorized in January of 2013, did three additional important things. It expanded domestic violence protection for the first time to women who are Native Americans, who live on tribal lands, and whose abusers are not Native American. Prior to February of 2013, when this law went into effect, Native American women who were abused by non-Native American men on tribal reservations had zero legal recourse, and those abusers acted with impunity, sometimes continuing abuse, and unfortunately sometimes even killing the women that they lived with. Thanks to the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act last year, we can now, at the federal level, prosecute those abusers when they abuse Native American women on tribal lands. That's a huge step forward, and it's saved lives around the country since the enactment of that law. The law also expanded protections for immigrant women and for lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered women who previously were not eligible for many of the support and programs existing under the Violence Against Women Act. I'm proud to say that the Violence Against Women Act today ensures that all women across this country and their kids are protected from violence. It's also important to note, Olivia, that the Violence Against Women Act protects men too, because sometimes men can also be victims of domestic violence, whether they're in a relationship with a woman or in a relationship with another man. Men are survivors of domestic violence, and the Violence Against Women Act also provides protections for them, just the same as those protections are provided for women and children as well. Thanks so much for your question, Olivia. We have time for one more. Mario from Scottsdale, you're live.
Hi, Congresswoman. Thank you for taking my call today. I'm worried about my mom not being able to afford her health care costs as well as her living expenses currently with the amount of Social Security that she's been receiving. And so I was just hoping you could talk about that for a second.
Well, I appreciate your question, Mario. You know, healthcare costs have been rising in our country for years. Some good news is that in the last year, they rose at a smaller level than they have in the past. But that's still not good enough for people like your mom who can't afford the increases. So I'm working to try and help find affordable access to health care for many Americans. Kelly, do you want to talk about some of the services that Planned Parenthood provides to women who can't afford insurance or are facing rising costs?
Absolutely. At Planned Parenthood, we offer many services at lower cost or free of charge. We have breast cancer screenings for lower income women. We have other cancer screenings available as well. But we also have whole woman evaluations that can happen at any of our clinics for lower income women and for senior women who are coming in wanting those services.
Well, that's great, Kelly. And, you know, I don't know if you know this, but when I was a young woman, I worked for a time without health insurance, and I got my Well Woman care from Planned Parenthood. So that was a big part of my early 20s, was getting the care that I needed from Planned Parenthood, and I'm grateful for that. They provided great services to me for my Well Woman exam, for all my screenings, and for the birth control I needed when I was in my early 20s.
Excellent.
So it was great. I'm really grateful for it. So I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. And if you weren't able to ask us a question, I hope you'll consider visiting our website to learn more about the work that we're doing. Our website is www.kirstencinema.com. You know, I think Congress is broken, and Congress needs to do more to help Arizona women get ahead. And that's why I'm fighting to protect access to health care, raise the minimum wage, and achieve pay equity for women, not just because it's right for Arizona women, but because it's right for Arizona families. I believe Congress should be helping families get ahead in Arizona. And as you probably know, I'm willing to work with anyone to create jobs, reduce red tape, and ensure that women can take care of their families. I appreciate everyone's time tonight, and I want to say special thanks to Kelly, our special guest, for her time tonight and valuable insights. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful evening, everyone.